r/AskReddit. What surprisingly is scientifically proven? Kansas is actually flatter than a pancake. It's similar to if you scaled a billiard ball up to the size of Earth. The mountains would be higher and the trenches would be deeper than our own, meaning Earth is smoother than a billiard ball. That's hard to comprehend considering I'm surrounded by mountains. Cracking your knuckles do not give you arthritis, nor will it duck up your joints in any other way. The only bad thing it does is annoy people who don't like the sound. The only bad thing it does is annoy people who don't like the sound, which may lead to a premature death. I have been constantly cracking every joint I can around people and sadly that hasn't worked yet. A bull in a china shop will try to avoid everything with at least a reasonable degree of success. So I'm more clumsy than a bull in a china shop. I'm actually banned from a china shop. Cursing after stubbing your toes is a pain. I ducking knew it. Isn't that the case with any stressful or painful situation though? Wouldn't holding back swear words just build up anger? Yup. Cathartic release does pain. Anyone who tells me not to swear is inviting me to deal with more pain. And, in such, makes an excellent profanity target. MSG occurs naturally and doesn't give you headaches. Metal Solid Gear. Edit. Why does this low effort comment have 600 upvotes? Edit 2. Now almost 1000? Is this what you guys upvote? Edit 3. Closing in. We can make it to 1.5k guys. No. Madison Square Garden. How your shoes get untied by themselves as you walk. Lint forms in the belly button because there's too much hair surrounding it. Huh. I have scars all around my belly button. And so not much hair. I wonder if that's why I never find lint in there. Scars. Why? The accepted science regarding salt consumption is based mostly on a study in the 80s that was not particularly rigorous and hasn't been replicated. The sugar industry sponsored a bunch of studies to blame fat for our poor health. I'm just going to eat what I enjoy and die young. But you can do both. Seriously. Take some time and cook a nice chicken or something. It's much cheaper than fast food or anything like that. And it tastes better and it's better for you. Trust me. It's the best decision you'll ever make in your life. Eating unhealthy just isn't worth it. Plus, at least I feel better when I eat healthier. Less bloat feeling. More energy. Less cravings. But so nice to touch. I'd like to see those studies. I've been performing research for over a decade. The results are pretty conclusive but further research is required. Nothing. Science never proves anything. That's not its job. You want proofs? Talk to a mathematician. Science does not deal in proof because it recognizes that it is not scientifically reasonable to say that we are absolutely, positively 100% certain about something in the real, physical world. There is always some degree of doubt, no matter how tiny. Rather, science creates theories, which are complex models of how and why we think the universe works. A successful theory explains everything that we see and has few or no unanswered criticisms against it. Counterintuitively enough, a required feature of a theory is that it must be falsifiable. That is, there must be an imaginable set of real-world conditions we could find that would make us toss the theory in the trash. If falsifiability does not exist in the theory, that's a red flag that we are dealing with something that doesn't play by the rules of the universe. For example, the claim that God exists is not falsifiable, no matter how many pieces of evidence I produce. It's not enough to change faith. But scientists do not speak in terms of proof unless they are speaking very informally, which they sometimes do. There are also some theories that are so well established and have such an unassailable mountain of evidence for them that it would be a little silly to not treat them like they have been proved. The notion that the earth revolves around the sun and not vice versa is one of those. It is just a theory, but it's a damn good one. And scientists just naturally treat it like it has been proved. Only a mathematician deals in absolutes. From my perspective, math is evil. Simply wearing underwear is enough to filter contaminating particles out of your farts. I believe some scientists performing surgery were wondering so decided to test it out. Edit. Someone with a much higher rated comment in this thread has posted the same thing, but with a link to more information, if anyone wants to know more. The optimal method of jerking off an entire room. After the scene in the show Silicon Valley, a Stanford professor wrote a paper with the actual calculations. Edit. As people have brought up, it wasn't a Stanford professor who wrote the paper. It was a scientist who was working as the tech consultant for the show, but got his PhD at Stanford. He did however seek help from a professor at Stanford to make sure the calculations were correct though. The way it is written cracks me up as well. I'm just imagining a professor giggling in front of a computer while typing out. In Secretary 1. We introduce a probabilistic model for audience stimulation. Seconds 2 refines this model by specifying distributional assumptions on audience members' receptiveness to stimulation. The member sorting approach that we suggest is described in Secretary 3, and its performance is numerically examined in Seconds 4. And just thinking there is no way they will let me publish this. It's not really published in the way that people think. The official authors are 2 characters from the show. Showing other people your travel photos is boring. I like looking at them. Probably because I never go anywhere but work. That gender is determined by chromosomes. Alright. I'll bite. X. Aka. The structure and organization of your biological exhale organs is determined by genetics. Gender is an idea that we have attached to biological X, but doesn't have nearly the biological basis much of the world's cultures perceive it to have. There are, genetically, 2 main X's, and then a number of weird fringe cases, inter-X and X mutations. Gender, however, is a human construct and can have many as you want. With the exception of a very vocal minority on Tumblr, no one is arguing that there's no such thing as genetically coded X. Everyone agrees that genetics determine whether you have a peen and testicles or a vag and ovaries. When people say there's no such thing as gender, they are talking about the social construct. To imply otherwise is both disingenuous and a pretty severe strawman fallacy. Edit. Change chromosomes to genetics to be more accurate. Gender in the sociological sense deals with the spectrum of masculinity and femininity. Like for example the color blue is associated with masculinity, whereas pink is associated with femininity. Associating certain acts, objects, colors, etc. with masculinity and femininity is a social construct. However, biological X is not. I think a large part of the confusion comes from the fact that as a society we associate X as being the same thing as gender. So when people say there are more than 2 genders, it confuses the hell out of people. However, if someone is talking in terms of how many genders there are, then they don't quite grasp what it means. No matter which side of the fence they fall on. Gender has 2 variables, masculine and feminine. Both are the axis of a spectrum we call gender. Of course, what is considered masculine or feminine is determined by society. Thus the gender is a social construct argument. However, the spectrum has 2 variables, and no matter how masculine or feminine someone is, no matter what they identify as, their X will remain the same. Not conforming to traditional binary gender roles not mean you are a different gender. It just means you fall on a different part of the spectrum than most people of your X. This doesn't make you any less of a man or woman. It just means you are non-traditional. Thus there are only 2 genders argument. One final thought. I've noticed recently that a small select group of people are confusing sexuality with gender. Straight, gay, bi, lesbian, asexual, etc. are not genders. They are sexualities. I know most of you already know this, but there is always someone that needs this said. You can be a gay guy, yet still be masculine. You can be a straight guy yet be feminine, and vice versa. So all this can be very confusing, so recap. X is binary, male/female. Gender is the spectrum between masculine and feminine. No matter where you fall on the spectrum, and everyone falls on a different part, you are not any more or less of a man/woman. That is to say, no matter if you conform to traditional gender roles or not, you are still the biological X your genetics determine you to be. Squeezing boobs can prevent breast cancer. So squeeze random women's boobs to prevent the spread of cancer in their body. Oh, I'm going to need a source for this before my wife gets home, so I can be prepared. For science. That always erases memory. I need a study done on people who live in open plan houses. Do their minds purge when moving from room to room? Or do they remember more things between rooms because they don't have doors? To put it simply, your brain will divide your experience into timelines based on physical spaces. Walking through any sort of threshold, perceived or otherwise, will cause your brain to switch to the appropriate timeline and purge any information it deems unnecessary from the last timeline. Thus you forget why you walked into the kitchen. It can even happen in virtual environments, like video games or just the internet in general. Sod's Law, or Murphy's Law if you're American. I.e. how when you knock your toast off the table it will land butter side down. Scientific American showed that not only is this true, but that there are scientific reasons why it should be so. And no, it's not because the butter makes one side heavier. They also covered a bunch of others, such as why if you forget something on your shopping list it will be as far away as possible in the store. If something can go wrong, it'll go wrong. So buckle the duck up. I mean, if something can happen it will. That's the definition of can. Obviously hinges that can't happen won't. And yet some people act like Murphy's Law means that things tend to go wrong, when it means nothing of the sort. The pull-out method for contraception actually works, if done correctly every time. Meaning the male does not ejaculate in the woman. It is 96% effective. This is more effective than the pill if the woman doesn't take it at the same time every day, 92%. While each contraceptive method has a perfect use statistic, likelihood of pregnancy if used correctly, and real use statistic, the actual percent of pregnancies of people using the method, I was still impressed with the effectiveness of pull-out when done correctly. The 4% would be if there is sperm in the pre-cum. Pre-cum does not have sperm, however. If the man has not urinated since the last time he ejaculated, it could be left over and thusly come out with the next pre-cum. Edit. Correcting punctuation. Adding a source. My human sexuality course at my university. Although these statistics are pretty easy to find on the internet, I may have not phrased what that %s mean well and I apologize. While on the subject, please know the pill can become ineffective while the woman is on antibiotics. Very important info I was never told until my mom told me, that's why I'm here. Cool. Be safe. Used it for years with my ex-wife. We were cool if there was an unplanned pregnancy, so didn't really matter when we planned, and I didn't pull out. She got pregnant almost immediately every time. Not a single unplanned pregnancy in 12 years of marriage though. Well, actually one at the end of the marriage, but it wasn't mine. Ho. It. No sources. Ducking like and subscribe.